Your dreams aren't big enough, if they don't scare you, if they don't keep you up at night, if they don't motivate you when you don't feel like it, they don't get you out of bed, they're not big enough.
Facts.
Your dreams should be so big, so astronomical, so large that it should just scare you into action.
Facts.
You should be wanting to chase after it every single day.
That's facts.
All right, welcome. Thank you for joining us for the first ever episode of the Facts Podcast. That is Faith, Action, Culture, Truth, and Solidarity. I'm Cedric Scott Jr.
Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Jamonte Banks. I'm blessed to be here, and we're going to get this thing going. Episode 1, baby. Let's do it.
That's right, episode 1. This is crazy. We've been talking about this, but not talking about this for a minute, right? We've been saying like, oh, you know, we have these conversations all the time. You know, it's great content, and we always do some powerful messaging between, you know, just the two of us in our immediate circle, but
absolutely
never really recorded it. And we were like, yo, why don't we just start recording this? And then, you know, the idea of the podcast was born, and, you know, I mean, I guess the rest is and will be history at this point. Right?
Is and will be history, man. Like, we've had countless conversations, and like you said, great things shared between us. And now it's just time to just do that with the world, man, because we have a lot to share, and even a lot to learn as we continue to go through this process. So I'm excited about it.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. So just, you know, to give a little bit of background and context, anybody who's checking in with us, first of all, thanks again for, you know, joining us and actually watching. We hope you stick around. There's much more to come. And so I'm Cedric Scott Jr. Again, I am a father, number one, of a 7-month-old baby boy, Cedric Scott III. A husband. My wife, Andrea, is, you know, probably the greatest inspiration and influence in my life. So I'm really appreciative of that. Originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So you see me drinking from the Steelers mug. Don't get it twisted though, because I haven't seen a NFL game in probably 4 years, ever since Colin Kaepernick started doing his protest. So, you know, I mean, the mug is the home team, but, you know, I'm not really watching the game. I'm gonna just be honest with you. But, you know, that's the crib though. Yeah. So, I mean, growing up in Pittsburgh, I ended up leaving the city to go to college, you know, at 18, of course. You know, once I graduated high school, went to Virginia State University, you know, shout out to the HBCUs. And yeah, I studied chemistry there, became a chemist. I kind of give a little bit of this background and bio on just about everything I talk about. And then I transitioned into education, which I've been doing for going on 7 years now. Currently working math curriculum. I was a teacher, math instructional coach, an assistant principal, all in the elementary school sector. And I run my own business called Ancient Baby Brand. Created some different content and context there with a program called Melanated Mathematics. So it's Black history and culture based math content for elementary students. Planning to STEM and, you know, branch out more into that. And I'm just really into, you know, supportive education and self-care for others. But amongst other things, I'm just happy to be here. I'm going to kick it over to my brother.
Thank you, sir. You know, definitely hard act to follow, but I believe we all have our own truths. And so I'm Jamonte Banks. I'm also a father. My daughter, Ladybug Talea, she is 8 years old and be 9 next February. I can't believe it. Time has flown by. I'm a father. I'm a husband. My wife, Kanisha Simmons Banks, not hyphenated, but I always just give her the S because, you know, gotta shout out the home family. But that's my, like, kind of similar to what said. Like, she's my backbone. She's my motivation. She pushes me. She challenges me. She keeps me grounded, keeps me humble, which is definitely important. I'm from Portsmouth, Virginia. Went to shout out to them Greyhounds, class of 09. And I left my hometown as well and ended up going to Virginia Tech, where I initially did chemical engineering. So I do got a lot of chemistry background in me. I almost had a double major with chemistry and human development, but I made a shift to human development, realizing that was really more of my lane and working with people and serving others in that capacity. So I went to the mental health field. Went into education, Teach for America Core 2014, which is where I met Cedric with the 3 P's, you know what I'm saying? But was in education at DCPS and DC charter schools for 4.5 years, where I taught math content. Ended up leaving education because I had some internal conflicts with like being a mental health professional and also being in the education sector, and realizing that they don't really always mesh together due to the bureaucratic process of like test scores and income and money and what have you. So I definitely had to make a shift in that, and took a lean or a liking to fitness, and ended up starting my own business as well. Soul Fitness, Stages of Life, and then into some other business ventures with some other business partners. Currently, my wife, she's a doctoral student at Howard University, studying neuropsychology. So we are here now in Texas, where she's working at the VA, and I'm here now as an administrator with IDEA Public Schools as an academic counselor, where I stand in the gaps and serve to advocate and accommodate families during this time, especially in schools, to make sure that they have what they need, and also that they're set up for success inside and outside of the classroom. So that's kind of where I am right now today. Also aspiring bodybuilder. I'm actually on a journey right now, so definitely excited to be here.
Let's go.
Baby, guns out. Let's do it. But yeah, man, I'm blessed to be here. I'm humbled, and I'm looking forward to all the things that we're going to create in this podcast.
For sure, man. Yeah, I mean, and just for anybody checking in again, the nature of what we're doing here, outside of just having our conversation is, we're planning to, number one, support, valid, strong, positive representation, especially, in terms of the Black community, amongst Black males. That's something that Jamonte and I both are very passionate about, with his background and, and my background growing up, and now what we do, in terms of, our work, and then just our passion, right? So, I mean, Jamonte, in working basically in mental health, and, just thinking about the trauma and all those pieces that kind of, shape, a lot of us, and, honestly thinking about the fact that those things are not normal, right? It doesn't make sense for kids to grow up, in certain environments and already be privy to certain things that many adults, don't ever even experience, so just, the idea there, and, just an awakening. So, I say all that to say, we kicked this off with the intros, and just some background context, because what we really want to get into is just talking about, that big question, I think that hovers over everybody, which is, who are you? At your core, who are you really, right? Like, what makes you tick, and what got you here? Like, look, regardless of where you are, you know what I mean? And just thinking about, more so in your future, like where you want to be, but, at this moment right now, because you got to be present, right? You got to be present to see your future, but also you got to think about the past. You don't want to dwell on it. You know what I mean? My father gave me the best advice my dad gave me, and I hope this doesn't hurt his feelings. He probably won't listen. Is you can't live in the past because the past won't let you live, right? Mm-hmm. And I actually went ahead and got that tattooed. But that to me is very powerful information, and just a deep insight, honestly, because while you are who you are right now, there's nothing to say that you can't be who you want to be. And also, there has to be a recognition of, know thyself, right? And also thinking about, well, what got me here? What transpired? So kick it over to you, Jamonte. Like, I guess if you were asked that question, who are you? I mean, what would you say?
Well, in these recent few weeks or so, I will have a quite different answer than what I would prior to that, because I really do believe that, initially we are a culminating factor of all of our experiences from our past and all the transgenerational traumas that we've either perceived indirectly or directly from our parents and our grandparents and even our environments. And kind of going back to what you said about, like, what we see, especially even in our education system in DCPS and all that, we saw like a lot of young people who are having to do grown-up things at the ages of 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. And so those things definitely have a bearing on how we view life as we do grow up and mature into adults. And so who am I? I look at it as a few things. I am a father, a husband, someone who wants to help people in social work in that capacity. And I also have a deep passion for bodybuilding. So I use those 4 pillars to kind of keep myself grounded and focused on everything that I do. So if it falls outside of those things, then it's not a priority, because I've realized that when you spin yourself too thin in other directions, then you can never really get to the crux of it all. So for me, helping others, living up to the expectations of being able to pour out of myself vulnerably and do it in a willing and open fashion is all I want to do with the world. Because I see so much hate, so much anger, so much frustration, so much tension and injustice and things going on. And a lot of times it's because we haven't taken that time to know thyself, like Sid said, and really kind of go deep within. And that's scary, right? Because you do have to uncover all these traumas. You do have to uncover your own iniquities and insecurities. You do have to uncover and debunk your own thought process of what was the status quo and what is the truth of who you are. And I had made a post not too long ago, but it kind of talked about like unlearning a lot of the things that we would learn due to our surroundings, because all those things are not even essentially the truth. It's only what we perceive to be the truth, or what's socially constructed to tell us what's right or wrong, what's pretty, what's ugly, what's good, what's bad, what's fat, what's skinny, all those things. And so I'm in a process right now to go back to your question of like trying to find out more about who I am and being comfortable with being an outlier of what the world perceives me to be.
Right.
I think that's the biggest thing, like just really walking in my own purpose freely, openly, and unapologetically.
Right. Yeah, I feel you. I mean, and I would concur on a lot of that. And just, it actually leads into, what I was thinking as you were talking, which is, that whole idea of finding yourself, right? Like a lot of people, talk about, you have to find yourself, right? Or I found myself, like, but I mean, I've always kind of wondered, like, what does that even mean?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And then, just, in a deeper context, like, how do you even know that you found yourself? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not like, you walk around the corner and it's a dude that looks just like you just standing there. You're like, oh, it's me. I found, it's not a game of like tag or, hide and seek, in terms of, figuring out who you are. I mean, it can seem that way, I think, but at the end of the day, and back to the point of everything that you were just talking about in a roundabout way, I say all that to basically say that, thinking about where we are presently, with even creating this podcast, right? Facts, right? Faith, action, culture, truth, solidarity, like all of those pieces, as you talk about like pillars, are pillars that we both, really align with. And, if I were asked, who are you, whatever, I mean, somewhere woven into that is, all of these pieces, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's facts. Like, it just, everything that, as you said, like is a culmination of our experiences and who we are, and I just want to reference a recent video you released and sent out into the world. You talked about the book, one of our favorite books, which is The Alchemist. If you haven't read The Alchemist, I think, for anybody out there listening, you need to go ahead and grab you a copy.
Check it out.
It's really going to be insightful for you on a different level. But yeah, I mean, it's the idea of seeking outward, what's already within.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that to me is probably the most powerful thing in terms of, knowledge of self and, that quote unquote, finding yourself. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you kind of hinted at before with, the way that, culture, not even culture, I would say, just
society,
right.
Yeah.
Kind of sets things up in terms of perception. It's like, this is good, this is bad, and it just, for those things, I think a lot of people end up, and I'm guilty of this as well, for sure. It just takes recognition, but seeking, something outside of yourself without ever actually being like, let me just go look in the mirror real quick. And I think that right there within itself is worth, $1 million, right? To be able to stare into your own soul and say, man, I don't like this about myself,
Mm-hmm.
or I really enjoyed this piece about myself, and being honest with yourself.
Yep.
It's real easy to lie to other people for some folks. I mean, some people I mean, Jamonte is pretty virtuous.
Some
You don't be out here lying to people. So,
yeah.
but you know, you the only person you can't escape is you, right?
Yeah.
You can't. You can run from everybody else, push everybody else away, but when it comes down to it, when you're in that dark space by yourself at the end of the day, you know, can you deal with you, right? Can you face whatever demons are going to basically awaken within you and come out and antagonize you, right? Can you deal with it? Can you handle it? And you know, I think that all speaks to, you know, talking about things like, you know, greater purpose, and all those things. So, I mean, just to kind of kick it over again to you, Jamonte, like, in terms of, you know, finding yourself, things like that. One question I often have is it better or is it more important to know who you are versus who you're not?
So, yeah, it's so funny. As you were talking, you had talked about like really understanding who you are, right? And so one of the things that really sets, I think, who you are apart is when you become aware, right? Awareness is like one of the first cornerstones of like digging deep to figure out who you was. And I think also you can't shake yourself, like you said. So there's a Navy SEAL by the name of David Goggins. He wrote the book "Can't Hurt Me," and the book is amazing, man. Like he's real cutthroat, he's real gutter, he's real straightforward. He don't sugarcoat anything. So if anybody goes check his book out or hears Audible, just be prepared to hear how he talks.
Yeah, you put me on that, right?
Think so, yeah. But in his book, there's a chapter where it talks about the mirror. And the reason why I'm sharing this is because I have experienced this firsthand. So I had read the book like a year or so ago, and I thought it was a great book. I loved it, what have you. But after I had finished my master's program for social work, I had like this inkling going to get my doctorate. And so I pursued. I applied. I got into a doctoral program, marriage and family therapy, and I started my classes. And it was hard from the jump, like, and not hard in the sense that I couldn't do it. It's hard in the sense that my heart really wasn't in it, right? But I kept ignoring it. I kept fighting it. Kept being like, oh, it is what it is. It's part of the process. And I went to go see my daughter for her birthday one year, and last year actually, and her mom and her grandma and everybody was there, and it was like, what's wrong with you? Like, you okay? Like, I could tell, like, you're here, but you're not here, right? And so I realized at that time I had to figure out something else. So I went home and I did a fast, and I fasted for a little while, and I sat down in front of my computer, getting ready to work on my next assignment, and then out of nowhere, I shut the laptop, and I went into the bathroom and looked literally in the mirror. I took David Goggins' perspective, and in that chapter, it talks about being honest with yourself, not sugarcoating it, being very blunt. And I was like, why are you doing this? You don't want to be here. You're doing it for the wrong reasons. That's why your heart's not in it. That's why you're behind. You're doing it because you want to make everybody else proud. You do it because that's what seems good. You want to be a doctor. You don't want to pay your student loans back. Let's be honest. Like, all those things were a part of it, but none of it was because I truly wanted to do it. And so in that moment, I realized that who am I? And that's when I went back to those four things. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a social worker, and I'm a bodybuilder. And those are the things that I try to stick to because I wasn't that person that I was trying to be. And the reason why I bring that story up is because a lot of the times we put on fronts for others to show ourselves in a better light about who we wish we were or who we want to be instead of who we truly are. And to go back to that question is like, you know, how do you know when you're being what you're not or what you are? I think the key to it is just having internal peace. When you feel like you're flowing in the right direction, like things are just happening at a flow. Like, we're not meant to struggle in this world. Like, we were never brought in this world to always be struggling. Stress, anxiety, all those things kill people. So we're not meant to do that all the time, right? So when you're finding that stream of flowing, that's how you know you're in your right space. And sometimes you get little nudges here and there to remind you that you're in the right space, because sometimes you don't always feel like it. But I think just kind of being in tune with, like, do I feel good about where I am right now? Do I feel good about what I'm doing right now? And that kind of being the litmus test of if you are on the right path or not.
Right. Yeah. So all the things that you just said, I mean, I personally agree with. Let me play devil's advocate real quick.
Okay.
Kind of nitpick on one of the pieces that you mentioned, which is doing things for basically for other people, right? Or doing it for recognition, or let's take, for example, the person who is maybe a legacy of sorts, right? And they're being funneled into a situation that is not necessarily for them, right? It doesn't fit them, whether it's, going to the same college, joining the same organization, going to the same line of work, whatever, what have you. For those people, right, because the pressure is immense, right? So in order for them to feel accepted and remain, I guess, essentially part of their family, for those folks, I mean, what do you have to say for them, though? Because, if everybody in my family has gone and walked this line, right, and if I do anything different, then I'm going to be, the black sheep or whatever. What do you say to that person? Because, it's not, I don't think, as, and I'm using this for lack of a better word, easy to make that shift. So, I mean, what are your thoughts for those folks?
So I think it goes back to our upbringing, right? So a lot of the times we are at and this is just human evolution, right? Like, we're at the disposal, we're at the mercy of our parents, we're at the mercy of our family. Like, we can't fend for ourselves, we can't go get our own home, we can't leave the house and run away and do those things and survive at least comfortably on our own. So a lot of times we conform to what they want of us. And I think in doing that, that's where the cognitive dissonance begins. If you feel something about it, right? And so it's like, you do, the tough part is like, do you become that rebel of the family and chase after what truly makes you happy? Or do you conform, get that job done, and then maybe later on you start soul searching, and kind of like, once you become an adult and you can do those things on your own and fend for yourself, do you then begin that process? Right. I think there is three ways you can kind of respond to that. One, you can take the alpha route, I would say, and just go with what you really feel and do it in spite of, and just figure out things as you go. Because there are people who have become successful. E.T. was one of them who was homeless, was living out of a crib, staying with a friend, like eating out the trash can, all those kind of things, because he was different than his upbringing. He had a disagreement with I think it was his mother or his father, during a very early
stepfather from
exactly.
what I read in his book. So
it's like, he took that route, right, and he struggled, but now he's a doctor, he's a world-renowned speaker, he does all those things, and he's living in his true purpose. But then you can say, okay, well, I'm gonna do everything my parents do say for the second approach. And then when I graduate high school, and if I go to college, and if I do all the things they want me to do, then once I'm grown and on my own and out of the house, if I decide that that's not really what I want to do, then that's when you start that soul searching process and you try to find your own path. And then at that point, they don't really have to accept you or not accept you, because it's your life that you're living.
Right.
And the last approach would be, which I think is the most common, but yet the least freeing, is when you just stay in that space and you live with it forever. And you don't feel like you're living freely. You feel like you're being constrained. You're not happy with your life. You have become complacent. You stop dreaming. You stop wishing. You stop aspiring, because you're just doing what the family told you to do. And yet you have the backing and the support of your family. But when you go to bed at night, or if you can go to bed at night, you're stressed out. You're thinking about what if, and you stop living. You literally stop living, and I never have lived. So I think it's three approaches. It's not easy, but you have to start figuring out where you fall in those three tiers, and just go from there.
That's facts for real. Because I mean, just thinking about it from, and I think we have to paint this with a kind of like a broad brush, right? Because what we're talking about right now may not actually even align, or what I would say is it's going to be more difficult even when you're getting into different cultures, right? Because in certain cultures, in certain countries, based on whoever this reaches, it might just be like, look, man, like, this is the way that it happens here, or, with us. Like, I think, being clear in saying that we, both of us as young Black men in America, right, in the United States, this is what we can say, because this is what we know, this is where we are, as far as that. But and also just kind of digging in and thinking about, for anybody who is in that position, or or we'll just take ourselves, and speak from our own experience and say, for me, I know that the path that I chose is and was and hopefully not will always be different from the paths that a lot of my family members chose, right? But I think within that, the goal is to get one across the finish line, right? You got to get one, right? Because then it's like, oh, okay, well, this is a thing, right? It can happen. And that's, for me, I always talk about, I recently just released a video talking about representation and just how important it is. And that's really what I'm on, because, thinking about upbringing and scenarios and environments, they always say, oh, I'm a product of my environment, right? Indeed, that's true, right? Yeah. Definitely facts. I am who I am, and I come from where I come from. But at the end of the day, that does not define who I am at my core and who I ultimately will, can or will become. Because, there's a lot of instances in different kind of nuanced pieces that go into, the societal aspects or, viewpoints and things like that, in perspective of who we are or who we are supposed to be, right? I'm, growing up in my neighborhood back in Pittsburgh on the South Side, certain things were just not as common, right? I'm a first generation college student, in terms of my career path, things like that. But, going into education, going into science, I played football growing up, which is a norm. Like, that's what we did. But that ultimately wasn't kind of like the end all be all of where I was trying to go, or, where I ultimately saw myself. And, Jamonte, I would also like to go into just talking about, when you do take those different steps and it creates, I don't want to say resistance or, just anything negative per se, but basically it can get to a point where, like, with the people you love, even, you could start butting heads, right? Based on the path that you chose, the choices you made. Like, I remember when I got to Virginia State as a freshman, I planned to walk on, or at least, attempt as far as, the football team goes. And I told my father, like, I wasn't going to, right? I told him I'm just not going to play. And my dad he like tripped out. Like, he was not happy with that. And I was like, I kind of, in that moment, that was probably the first time where I had actually kind of like snapped back at my dad, like, what I mean? And like kind of clapped at him on the phone, like, yo, like, because, in that situation where I was like, hey, I'm here. I've made, this journey, and ventured into some, world that my, personally, and this is, nothing against him, but that he's never done, that he's never seen, or experienced. And on top of that, I'm studying chemistry. Like, you have no idea how hard this is right now. But, in that regard, Jamonte, like, talk about, when you get to I guess a crossroad, if you will, with dealing with who you are and trying to figure out that, and then also, dealing with like backlash or, just any type of like roadblock that the people that you love might put in front of you. Like, how do you even begin to like navigate that?
Whew. Oh man, that's a tough one, right?
Heavy out here.
The $1 million question.
Heavy in episode 1.
You know what I'm saying? And we got many more to go. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
But no, I guess for me, and like I said, I like to speak for myself because that's the only place where I know, because that's all I have, right? It's tough, right? It's tough. But I think for me, what I found is I've seen young people who, one of my frat brothers who was 22 years old in great health, played football for college on the collegiate level and went into an MBA and worked for a Fortune 500 company in great health. Mm-hmm. And he dropped dead at 22 years old.
Wow.
So then I think about, life is too short to be too concerned about how people feel about what you're doing. because you never know you don't know when your last day is gonna be. So I think for me, I think about the legacy. I think about my grandparents, great grandparents, those who have come before me, who have passed away, that I want to carry on those legacies for. And I also go back to living, want to live freely. So if I want to do that and I care about my life, because this is the only one I get to have, then I value what I want to do for my life freely over anybody. Because if I leave this place right now, and if I wasn't following my passion, then my life in my own eyes would have been unfulfilled because I didn't press forward, right? Think about all the people, and if we want to go back culturally, like to people, slaves who wanted to become free, right? The norm, the families, they was butting against them too. Like, don't you try to do this, don't you try to do that. But what would have happened had they not? We wouldn't be talking about Rosa Parks. We wouldn't be talking about Harriet Tubman. We wouldn't be talking about Martin Luther King if we all just stayed in line and did what everyone wanted us to do. Malcolm X. So, so I think about it that way. Like, I want my life to be purposeful, and I want to do it. I want to leave this world empty. So if I want to do that, I can't be too concerned about everyone else's life because, and this is another thing I think about, you have to be somewhat selfish. Just a little bit. Because you look at it from the lens of, our parents, like for your father, for example, my mom, whoever, like they've had X amount of years to live. And if they feel like they aren't where they want to be, or they haven't seen or done things differently because they don't have a different perspective to kind of compare, right. It's not up to me to try to convince them because they will never be able to understand. All I can do is continue to force my life and try to lead by example, like you said, cross the finish line, and hope that those who are watching and listening and gleaning into what that we're doing will take heed somewhat, So I think that goes back to what we're both like, the older siblings of our families. And so, if we conform and we don't try to, be that Harriet Tubman, that Malcolm X, or that Martin Luther King for our siblings, right, and do something that's different and truly chase after what we want to pursue, then they will never think that it's possible for them to do it, or see the successes, or see different perspectives, or see the world differently. So I think it's selfish, man. Like, I love family. I do. I love everybody. But Jamonte Banks got one life, and it's his.
That's facts. Yeah, I mean, that's a bar because in a couple of things that you just said, I'll touch on the last piece first, is basically talking about the impact that you can have when you are courageous, right? And as far as, even thinking about, I'm going to just leak some of the stuff that you've been putting out there recently, talking about loving courageously, right? Those things, whether you see it or not, they do happen, right? And they do create, an effect, because I know for myself, as an example, I went into education, it just kind of on a whim almost, where, it wasn't really in the greater plan of where I saw myself. But it was one of those things that happened, and, I thank God because it happened, because to me, in terms of shaping who I am now and all the work that I'm doing and how I'm committing myself to certain things, it played a great role. And then, of course, I actually met my wife at work as a teacher. So just thinking about all those things and met Jamonte, right? So, considering that on top of the fact that right now, from where I'm sitting, I just had a conversation just recently with my sister, my youngest sister. I just reached out to her. She just had a birthday, actually. She is, she is a senior at Penn State, and go figure, she's actually studying to become an educator, right? So she's about to graduate, with a degree in secondary education. She wants to teach middle school math. She's tripping, but
yes, she is. I've been there.
But I mean, it's like those things, right? And being in the position that I'm in and have been, I feel blessed and really excited about the fact that I'm able to offer her some insight, right? When I first started teaching, she actually came into my classroom, my third grade math class, and she sat, she hung out with me for, the whole day. And this was back actually when she was in high school. And you know, it's interesting how things come full circle because she's a person who always wanted to be an educator. Like she would go to school, come home and play school. Like that was the thing. Like you would, you know, after kindergarten, you would hear her down in the basement at the house, and she's like yelling at this imaginary class. I'm just like, what's going on? She's like, I'm teaching. I'm like, you ain't teaching nothing. You just being me. So
She about that life. She about that.
I don't know. I don't know what your teacher's been modeling, but you know, you wilded out a little bit. But yeah, I mean, just thinking about that and in her path now and how, you know, just even the whole college aspect because I'm the second oldest. You know, I have one older brother, but then she's the baby of the family. And that, you know, nothing to take away from my other siblings because, you know, love them dearly and everybody does what they do within their own right. Like, but you know, there's a lapse there, right? There's a big gap between her and myself. I mean, it's not that great. I mean, I'm, you know, 30 years old. She just turned 22, but there's an 8-year time frame, you know, to where that matriculated down to. So for me, it's like I couldn't beat myself up about, you know, not being able to provide that particular influence for my siblings, I guess. And you know, and for everybody, you know, everybody's different, right? I grew up in a house with, you know, 6 kids, and we're all different people. Right? Yep. We're all completely different people. We got our own ways about us, and you know, but we all, you know, are tied together through our parents. But you know, and then also kind of bouncing in a different direction right now, and talking about you know, just like the whole change of direction and how that happens, right? You know, it's amazing to really think about generations and you know what people have gone through and where we are, right? Because you know, I think about like my grandmother who you know, was an executive chef you know, in Pittsburgh, and you know, she didn't go to college, and I don't even know if she went all the way through high school. I mean, you know, and just the breakdown of those things. But I think what happens is that we kind of create you know, those cycles, right? And it's on us now at this point, you know, as change agents, as who, you know, whatever, you know, to really think about how do we step outside of those cycles, right? And change things and, you know, make different moves available to other people. So Jamonte, I mean, I don't know if you want to jump in, you know, talk about that. Yeah, I mean, it's a real thing.
It is real. It's so real. And so, man, it's the more and more we talk, I've realized we have a lot of similarities. And so, to your point, I would like to add, like, my little sister, she just turned 17. And since about, I think, well, since we moved to DC, so like 2014, 15, every year, I would have my sister come out to Maryland and DC and stay with us for the summertime.
Yeah.
Just to get her away from back home. Remember, different perspective, right?
Exactly.
Letting her see things differently. We actually go on family vacations. Like when she do chores, when, you know, we teach about things. I remember she gonna see this and I'm gonna let her see this, but her first summer she came up and went to the National Mall and she didn't even know the daggone monument. So I made her do a report on who these people were, because I'm like, how you in I don't know the daggone. But anyway, it's because of those close contacts. And like I said, showing different things and also modeling by example that she, like, I love the little girl to death. Like she took to listening. She listens. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like like you said, all of our siblings are different. Everyone's different. And I love everybody for who they are. I've gotten to a space where I no longer try to force things upon people, right? But people who are kind of like the person chasing the guru, people who are actually thirsty for it, I'm giving it to you. So, for example, my little sister, I'm so proud of her because she's really now at a point where she's questioning where she wants to go while she's still in high school, right? Like, she's not waiting until she goes to college. She's not waiting until 30 years from now to be like, oh, this is what I don't want to do. Like, for her birthday, before I left to come to Texas, I got her some books, The Alchemist. I got her Debt-Free Degree. And for her birthday last month, I got her The Fifth Agreement. Like, and so I got her reading. I got her, like, understanding. And so her perspective, her way she's thinking about things is so different, and she's currently going through the thing that we talked about where her and my mom are bumping heads because now she's kind of woke, if you will, and she's thinking about things differently, which is different from what my mom wants for her to do, right? And so how does a 17-year-old who's the baby of the family, who's the last one to leave the nest, how does she battle with that? And so I always try to pour into her as much as possible to let her know that she's doing right, she's doing good, and don't lose sight of that because you're in a very unique space that we didn't really have, right? And so it's not our fault, but it's just our responsibility to be change agents, to have those supports in place for our younger siblings and our children so that we don't continue to perpetuate these cycles that we keep talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not your fault, but it's your responsibility. That's always going to be a bar, like
timeless, man.
Always, like, and just talking about that, right? What I hear you going into is something that I'm real big on too. Along with representation is exposure, and I think always back to personal experience and simple things, right? Like I didn't see a beach until I was 21 years old, like, and it was Virginia Beach at night. Like,
757.
I was at Virginia State. Well, my homies was like, "You ain't never been to the beach?" And I'm like, "Nah, man, I never been there." And I think we went up. I think it was Virginia State Beach weekend. Shout out to VSU, man. And we went up. Actually, like a lot of my homies is from that area. Like, they're like literally, driver's license says Virginia Beach, Virginia, like. And, or from somewhere in the 7-5 and just around that area. And it was just a normal thing. Like, they were just like, what are you talking about? And then you go and it's like, they're like, man, I'm like in this weird movie scene type of thing. Cause it's, it's night. So it's black and the waters are just, whoosh, whoosh, and it's crazy. I'm like, I'm tripping. I'm like, I take my shoes off and I'm just marching out there. And they like, what's up with him? And they were like, go ahead, man, just check it out. I'm like, I'm walking out there and I'm like, I about cried. I'm like, this is crazy. And to think about that on top of just all of the things that I have been able to experience by stepping outside of the comfort, right? You got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Boy, you gotta be.
Making changes and also recognizing that, you might not be able to make the change that you want right now, but not giving up. I think back to, my chemistry job, actually, I used to tell myself like, yo, this is a means to an end. Like, I'm going to do something different. And it was the mindset that something better was going to come. Like there was something I couldn't describe or really say, but it was like, there's going to be an impasse. It's going to happen. And the idea of that is recognizing, if and when that does come, right, opportunity, whatever it may be, are you going to actually seize it and understand what it is? Or you want to just kind of be like, and be stuck. Yeah. Where you have that choice, right? And I also think back just to even, in college, to be completely honest, like I was going to leave Virginia State because it came to a point where I basically didn't have enough money in my second year to stay on campus in the dorms, right? We call them residence halls down there. And, I was essentially, to some effect, like homeless in college, for a good period of time. It was just like I was, people, and the only thing that really saved me, I think, in that situation, because I'm thinking cyclically, right? I'm like, man, I can go back home. I can work. No disrespect to community colleges, but I can go to community college. It's going to be a lot less money. And just as an excerpt, anybody who's considering college and you want to deal with it financially responsibly, you might actually want to think about community college for the first 2 years and then transfer out. I'm just saying. But so I thought about it, and I had somebody, who really close to me, a good brother of mine, pull me to the side and say, Jamonte, to your point, to bring it all back is, you got to be selfish. Like, if you're somebody who's used to doing and with everybody else in mind, it has to be a point where you have to realize, that whole thing about, putting your own mask on first on the plane is a reality in life, right? In order for you to be able to do anything for anybody else, you have to help yourself first. Because think about it. If I leave college and something happens to where I'm not able to reach the level that I want to, or if I go home and I fall back into the cycle, right, of just basically being, what I was conditioned to be or what my family, perspective was, then there's no way that I'm able to now provide supports or, help other people, right? And not just my family, but just people in general. As an educator, you reach families and a lot of kids, and a lot of times you don't even think about that, the impact that you have, but it's that choice in that moment right there that makes all the difference, right? To say, I have to be selfish right now, and I'm gonna be real, like people might not like it. Like you gotta just to be honest. But it takes, I think, courage and foresight in that moment to recognize and understand what it is. So going from that, and then just the exposure now in terms of my life, making that shift, all the things I've been able to accomplish, just at the age of 30, I look back and I'm just like, I don't feel 30 years old. Like I feel old. Like, and I hope that that's not a bad thing. And it's just something that I've always kind of, dealt with as like, I've always been coined like, oh, you're an old soul. Like,
Yep. Same.
Yep. Like cultural taste and things like that. But yeah, I mean, it opens up doors, man. I've been blessed to be able to, travel the world. I've been a lot of different places all over Europe, Italy, Greece. The two of us, we kicked it over in Europe. I mean, so it's just, where we were in Paris.
Paris, yeah, we were in Paris.
I mean, and to me, it's interesting, and not to kind of shed light, negatively on certain aspects of what I'm about to say, but one of my big things is culture, and along with culture is music, and let's just be real about it. Hip hop culture influences the entire world, right? So
all over. Yeah.
And I mean, to me, I was tripping whenever I started living certain lyrics in my life, right? Like, I mean, and I might have to bleep this out, but niggas in Paris, like we did it. We actually went, you know what I mean? And growing up, I'm like,
bruh,
Paris, you don't go like that doesn't happen. That and then another joint like Rick Ross, he had a song called Santorini, Greece, and I literally sat on the side of a mountain with my wife in Greece, in Santorini, on that island, and had a drink at like a little cocktail bar or whatever. And it's supposed to be one of the most beautiful sunsights in the world. And I mean, I concur, but it's just those things, but they all stem from going all the way back, right? And saying, in those moments, do you make those decisions? Do you make the hard choice, the sacrifice right now, to ultimately get to where you want to be or have what you want to have? So it's amazing.
You hit gems, dog. Go ahead. Right. So, Les Brown speaks about do what others won't do now so that you can have a life that others won't have later, pretty much. And I may be paraphrasing that, but, a lot of the times, and like, again, we come from similar backgrounds. So like, our families come from a lower socioeconomic status area, what have you, inner city, what have you. Yeah. And a lot of times we carry this burden of, or not even burden, I don't want to call it burden. Yeah. This hope that one day we're able to change their lives and be able to provide those things, like you said, right? Like go see the world, or even do things like have family come be with us, or provide something like that for those opportunities, right? Right. If we never chase after what really makes us who we are, and we don't really make that decision to be selfish now so that we can be selfless later. Ooh, selfish now so we can be selfless later. All right. I say it again. You know what I'm saying? then we will never be able to actualize the things that we want to do, which is give back to the community, give back to our families, love on everyone, show them that we can make it, and be that person that, can provide resources if someone should ever need it. Right? Like, I can't retire my mama if I do the things that I'm told to do because they don't agree with what I'm doing because they can't see anything different. So how can I retire her if I'm still back home not doing whatever I want to do and just conforming to what my family wants me to do instead of chasing after what really makes me happy? Yeah. Because if I'm miserable, even if I'm working at a Fortune 500 company and I'm making bank, if I'm miserable, then I'm going to have other vices. I'm going to have depression. I'm going to have all the other things I'm dealing with that's going to get in the way of me being able to be the person that I want to be for others. So income and money is not the end all be all. And that's why I always say, like, I don't chase money. I chase my happiness, right? Like, eventually, when you chase your happiness, other things will come. You will see those things kind of come into fruition. And like you said, like, us, me at 29, you at 30, we've seen a lot, been a lot, and done a lot of things. And I used to remember, like, seeing, like, Looney Tunes and cartoons with the little Eiffel Tower and, like, Tasmanian Devil with a road running up the Eiffel Tower and running down. And to be able to go up the Eiffel Tower and see the light sparkle in a whole new world, that's the type of things about exposure that changes my whole perspective. Right. I'm eons away from Portsmouth. But then we have to understand that a lot of our family may have never saw anything outside of Portsmouth, right, or Pittsburgh or whatever. And so they don't even know that the other things exist in this world. Right. And so I think it's like, man, like, life is just, it's a beautiful thing, man. I have a story, but I'm going to wait because I want to see how this thing goes organically. But I do have a story that I think will bring this thing home as well.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and, just thinking about that, I think what we have to do at this point also is make it very clear that we are not downing where we come from.
No, not at all.
And I try to make mention of that all the time, and just make sure that that's at the forefront of everything, and really just talk about basically how valuable, those, the experiences that, we've had early on in life, and also what it means now, right? Like, so there's a lot of things that we don't even recognize, that play a part in what we are and who we are right now. You know what I mean? So, even digging into, like, the question of, what is your why? What's the purpose of what you're doing? And, what's the goal? Like, who are you trying to impact? And is it authentic? And also, is it beneficial to anyone outside of yourself?
Yeah.
Because in those situations, in those cases, what I've found is that the things that you do with others in mind are more likely to come to fruition and flourish and actually bring you the things that you want and you didn't even know that you wanted or needed at the time, versus going, full steam into something with yourself in mind, right? Just thinking about you. Right. Even when you have to be selfish, right? You have to be selfish. This is crazy. Selfish with other people in mind.
Damn.
You know what I mean? Like, you have to say, look, I'm gonna deal with it now. And kind of take the brunt of what's going to happen and, what's going to come from this. But at the end of the day, I know that down the line, me doing this right now and, enduring whatever I have to do, is going to not only be beneficial to myself, but it's also going to help, my family, whoever. And I think, in terms of, a lot of folks, we talk about generational wealth, and building legacies and things like that, and a lot of different avenues, and I'm not a business professional or anything like that, but, just even thinking about, a lot of things directly aligned with ownership and understanding how important it is, for us, especially coming from backgrounds where, we never really had, things to call our own, right? So, I mean, I know growing up, we didn't own our house, we didn't own any land. I don't even recall us having a car. So it's just those pieces. But then also, on a greater scale, in terms of the education and all of those things too. Is just, regarding, the exposure and kind of the breakdown of that cycle, those cyclical norms, and in figuring out and kind of picking and choosing the pieces that work or make the most sense for the end result that you seek, right? It's because while we didn't have much, we weren't like, it wasn't extreme poverty or anything like that. But my father, after, my mom passed when I was 10, and she was only 33 years old, left behind, my father's 6 kids. So it's like, yes, my father did not go to college or anything like that. However, I saw that grind, like that daily, I'm going to make it happen for my family, for my kids. We're all going to stay together as a family. I'm going to raise them to the best of my ability. And, I owe my life, to him. And also to that, the essence of that grind and that hustle, that mentality of hard work, and, and those values, like those things, you can't pay for that, right? You can't buy that. Like, and you also, in some context, I don't think you can really teach it at a certain point. It's just like, you either got it or you don't, you know what I mean? And those things that's passed down in lineage, right? And that can stem all the way back to our ancestors and say, and I'm not talking about, enslaved Africans. I'm talking about the folks in Africa who, in turn were pulled from the homeland, and then, brought over and, gone through all that crazy mistreatment that we're actually, still seeing remnants of today. But I think all of that, plays a role, and that's this type of stuff that got me to, to college and through college, and, regardless of what the scenario was or what the, support was at that time, it's like, you got to pay homage, right? At the end of the day, and, that's just where I'm at with it, honestly. You can't have a future without a past and a present. Simple.
Period.
And those things don't have to ultimately be exactly what the future becomes, but they do have a role, right? They do have a hand in it. All those people, all those experiences, everything that you've seen, every trauma, every joy, they all, culminate, as you said, so going back to the beginning of the podcast is, we are the collection of those things, right? We're the nation of it. When it all comes together, you know what I mean? A lot of us, we might wear our pain a different way, or a lot of that stuff. But I even talk about, talking about like even my tattoos and things like that. They're all tied to, something. Some of them are tied to pain, right? But regardless of that, it's all, in, my DNA and my makeup. And ultimately what I want to pass on to, my son and other people. And, ultimately the reason why, I felt like this was a great idea for us to jump on here and do this podcast and get things out to the world, because, there's a lot to be said. But at the same time, there's a lot to be done. And, that's where we are with it. It's just, we talk a lot, but it's, what are we doing? What are we doing?
What have you done for me lately? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And bro, like, excuse the noise in the background, but
good.
You can't take, and this is going into a little sneak peek about traces, but you can't take like one part of your life and not the other, right? Like, I don't believe in anything that is a mistake, anything that happened by happenstance. Everything was intentional and everything had a place. And all the hardships, all the joys, all the in-between moments were all meant to bring us to this point today. Because if we didn't go through those things, we wouldn't have anything else to reference or to push us or to sway us or to direct us, because that's what we know, right? So for me, in my early experiences, like I made a video a while ago for my mom. Like, she's my superhero because, she was a single parent and she worked 2 jobs. And a lot of things that I learned from her was her work ethic, was how she took care of her kids, was how she had grit and made things happen, was how she saw the importance and significance of education. And regardless of how tired she was, she always made sure that I did my work, I did well in school, and now because of that, I took school seriously. I did well academically. I went on to college. I went on to get my master's. I attended a doctorate. But I was given that opportunity because of her laying that foundation.
Right.
So we can't ignore the sacrifices that have been made from our family, from our surroundings. I even had my boys back home, and I use my boys because my 757 Truxton, Pistol City. We all know what's up. But they saw something in me too. They was like, bro, whenever we were doing some knucklehead stuff, they was like, yo, Tay, go home. Say don't even be a part of this, dog. This ain't for you. Or my uncle, he was 14 years older than me, so his friends were still in the neighborhood too. And then whenever they were doing something, saw me around, it was like, Lil Banks, Lil Kenny, go home, don't be a part of it. So we have to acknowledge the fact that we have a lot of protective factors. We have a lot of people who were there for us, and those omens and those safe spaces that really just kind of was there all along, kind of guiding us. Because all it would have taken was one time for them to say, "Come on with me," that I could have done something that would have changed my life drastically, right? So you can't take away from all the people and all the things and experiences that you've gone through, because they ultimately make who you are. It's what you do with that's important,
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I think I wanted to also highlight that you mentioned something about resistance, right? I think when I say things should flow, I don't mean that it will be easy. I think peace is at the core of what you want to become or what you want to achieve. And peace is not a fleeting thing. Peace is internal, it's consistent, and it's in spite of the turbulence. It's in spite of the great highs and the great and the lows. If you are at peace about something and you really believe that what you're doing is where you're supposed to be, you're going to be met with other obstacles. Murphy's Law is a very real thing. It doesn't matter how good or how great or how big a bank account or whatever you got going on, you're still going to be met with challenges. But if you can keep your inner peace and be able to still move forward, that's where you have figured out the keys, because you're going to be met with those things. Because you can't sway and turn every time you're met with turbulence. But if you feel in the pursuit of that you aren't at peace with it, that's when you got to be okay, this isn't where I really need to be.
Right.
And I think that's kind of in a nutshell, man, we got to pay homage to all those. I love my mom. I love everybody, man, for all the things they've done and all the things they've kept me away from or pushed me towards, because I'm here today because of it.
Yeah, that's facts. And it's crazy, man, how there's parallels drawn, man, because I was listening to you, and one thing that you mentioned is you had people in your life who knew that the choices that they made or were making, and the things that they were doing did not align to what they wanted for you or what they thought, what's best for you, which is, for me, I had the same experience. This is crazy. Maybe a week ago, I had actually posted on Facebook, and I shouted out three of my cousins actually. And for them, I basically just said, and I shouted them out, but I included it to say anybody in that capacity in my life that basically was yo, go in the house, or basically saw something different in me, and they said, nah, man, you don't do this. I'll take care of it, right? I remember one situation somebody stole my bike, and my cousin just took it upon himself to deal with the situation in the way that he handled it. And it was brought it back. And I'm just man, it was you don't even realize, until, you get to a certain point and you think back, hindsight is 20/20. And, if looking at things in retrospect, I'm those were safeguards, right? If you grew up, in what they call the inner city, the hood or whatever, it's you don't, you got to think about, on your path to school or wherever it is you're going, if there's anybody who kind of would step in the way of harm for you, right, whether they are, directly related by blood or not, those people are just as impactful in your life and, have had, just as much of an effect as your greatest teacher, or, you know what I mean? And, and I say that again, not to demean anybody's position, but people can only give you what they have at their disposal, right? People can only teach you what they know. But the interesting thing is that when you're in those environments, and people who are not necessarily doing what is quote unquote right by society, when they make a conscious choice not to teach you what they know, right, and encourage you to go the other route, like I just don't think that those things are, as as talked about or as pronounced. And I feel like those people are like the unsung heroes. Like there's a lot of corner boys and old head hustlers and, big homies and stuff like that who really paved a lot of the initial way, and opened up some of those doors that we don't even realize that we were walking through at the time, So thinking back, like, man, I'm like, anything really could have happened, to be honest. Like, yes, it stems back to, personal, personal thought process and knowledge, and what you want ultimately. But you got to think about the fact that as a kid, your brain's not fully even developed to know what you want, right? You don't know if you want chicken nuggets or a hamburger, but it's like for these folks, most cases probably older than you, think back to those, to those people and to anybody listening to this and watching, the video. The question I kind of want to just throw out there again and bring this all back, full circle, and we're creating that a new cycle, right? And I want you to really think about that, and also ask yourself, at this moment, who are you? Who are you really? And be honest, be real, and then also say, okay, that it is what it is, right? And then ask yourself, who do I want to be?
Yeah.
And who am I? I am who I am right now. And then who do I want to be? And also, how do I get there, right? And at the same time, just remember, that we always have to reach back and think about, who am I paying homage to? That got me at least to here, because, I can be grateful for who I am right now, where I am. It may not be with, who you want to be or where you want to be, but, in many cases, I would say you're probably further than than where you were before. And in each day, how do you get even closer? Those are just, my initial thoughts, and just bringing everything all just kind of back, and staying true to form with this. And, I just open it up to, people really having honest conversations with themselves, with the people around them. Think about your circle, and, just look deeper, surface, everything looks good on surface, right? We got, you see everything on Instagram and life looks great, but, when you dig a little bit deeper, and you pull those things out, those skeletons, those I guess less happy, or whatever you want to call them type of things, then what, right? Then what? Because it's all there, it exists, and none of us are exempt, right? So, what do you do with that, and how have those things shaped who you are right now? But the ultimate goal is thinking about the future, and then also, of course, with your loved ones, especially those of us that are parents, thinking generationally, intergenerationally, and how do we take what we've gotten from our ancestors, from our direct relatives, and then turn that into something innovative and build anew for the next, right? So yeah, I mean, that's those are my little little tidbits. I don't know if you want to jump in and add anything else, Jamonte.
Yeah, just as we wrapping up, I know we've been talking for a minute, but it's like it feels like it hasn't been long at all, because we talking about good stuff, But I think I'll leave with this, right? So there's this story of that was kind of explained. I don't remember the origin of it, so please forgive me. Nobody get me for plagiarism or anything like that. But it was a story about this young man who had went to the afterlife. Let's not, call it heaven, whatever you want to call it. But when he was met up there, he was met by an angel. And the angel was pretty much giving him a tour, like, yo, this is, the pearly gate, this is this, like this, it's all nice looking, what have you. But there was this one building that looked out of place, right? It was one building that just didn't fit. Like everything else was like marble and gold and this and that. And this was like this rickety wood warehouse type thing. And the guy was like, what is that? Like, what is that about? And the angel was like, nope, don't worry about that. Keep going this way. Right. But the dude was like, he insisted on knowing what that place was. So the angels conceded. He conceded and said, okay, all right, I'm going to show you. But, I'm trying to tell you, don't do it. So it took him to the place, the warehouse, and he opened the door. And like, it's like a huge warehouse full of like endless bookshelves of like these perfectly wrapped gifts. Red box, gold ribbon, beautifully wrapped with names on them. And the guy asked him, he said, do I have one of these gifts here in the warehouse? And he said, man, look, we still can turn around. Like, let's go see the other place. Let's go do some other things. And he was like, no, like, do I have one? So again, the angel conceded and took him to find his name. And once he found his name, he saw this box, and it was the same red with gold ribbon. And the angel was like, look, man, we can leave. Don't open it. Like, it's all good. But he insisted. And so the angel conceded and gave him the box to open it. And when he opened it, he fell to his knees and cried. Why did he cry, you ask? Because everything that was left in that box were the things that he did not do while he was here on earth. It was all the gifts that he had left unfulfilled. It was the gift that he was supposed to bring forth into this world that he didn't. And the angel reminded him, like I told you, like this is, but all these boxes are filled with people who left this world without ever living and left unfulfilling or not completing their mission. So my ending question to people is right now, when you're looking for who you are, if you were to leave this place right here in this moment, would you leave fulfilled? Would you have a box up there in the afterlife or heaven? Or would you go up there and your box is not there because you've already fulfilled your life and you're complacent and okay with where you are currently? If you think about those things, I think if you found like you're good and you're good to go, great. If you have any contention, any kind of apprehension or uncertainty, that goes back to the title of this first episode, Who Are You? And then you could begin that process of figuring out how to leave this world empty and not full, and taking it to where it's no use for anyone. So I love y'all. And that's all facts. I don't know, what I'm saying? Say what you got anything else, but man, I just had a great time today. Episode 1 of many. And man, I thank y'all for listening and tuning in.
For sure, man. Yeah, that's mic drop. I don't even want to jump back in and say nothing else, man. Honestly, yeah. Once again, just building off what you were saying, just saying thank you to everybody for tuning in. We really hope that people come back, bring some people with you, share this video, like it, comment, send us some ideas if things that you want to see discussed. Questions that you may have, feel free to reach out. Jamonte, you want to tell them where they can find you on social media?
Sure. So on Facebook, it's just Jamonte R. Banks. You can find me up there. On Instagram, you can find me at courageously_vulnerable_J. All right. So it's courageously vulnerable J. And also it's courageously vulnerable on TikTok. I'm just learning to get about TikTok, but give me some time and I have some content there as well. But that's where you can find me.
All right, I feel you. I'm in the same kind of boat, in terms of the social media aspect. So you can catch me on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and then my business page at Ancient Baby Brand, all one word. And then also on Facebook, you can just catch me, Cedric Scott Jr. I'm there as well. You can definitely reach out. Once again, like you said, like, comment, share, send us some questions, different topics that you want to, do. We're definitely looking forward to getting some guests on the podcast and, getting some more perspective and insight. But once again, thank you very much for being here. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing y'all back next time.
For sure. Episode 2.
All right. Peace and love, everybody. Take it easy.
Peace.
Just continue to push forward, continue to know that you have purpose, and continue to fulfill your dreams and your passions, and everything else will fall into place.